to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin, here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is neuroplasticity, which is a really cool conversation because it blends science with our, perhaps our practices of positive thinking and reframing. It's all about being able to truly, physically retrain the brain. So it's an exciting conversation. And before we get started, let's take a couple minutes to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, all your molecules, all your electrons, and creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our hands together, vigorously rub your hands together and to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, the tickling and tingling when you stop. And allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables us to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So good to be here with you this morning. And good morning, Rosalind. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here to join us. We had some technical difficulties yesterday, just like super spotty internet connection. So it's great to be able to be back and wrap up the week together. So today we're talking about neuroplasticity. And one of the things that we talk about a lot is curating our stories and looking for opportunity in whatever circumstances present themselves, and recognizing that life is happening for us and through us rather than to us. All of these perspectives support us in retraining our thought patterns which are also correlated with our emotional patterns, which are also correlated with our physical patterns. And so I've mentioned earlier this week a book that I'm reading by Annie Hopper called Wired for Healing. And it's so much in line with the work that I do with the Core Connection work, where we create a new context, a new interpretation. When we reframe prior experiences and traumas, for example, when we find a new perspective, it shifts our emotional state. And what our emotional state is a chemical set within our body. It's a whole matrix of physiology, chemistry, emotion, etc. And so this book and the DNRS, Dynamic Neural Retraining System, that Annie Hopper has developed is all about creating new pathways. What neuroplasticity is the ability of our brain to create new synapses, new synaptic connections. So we can consciously, deliberately be patterning these new pathways. And it takes repetition, it takes practice, it takes consistency to be redirecting these deeply entrenched channels of behavior and reactivity within our bodies to within our body and being, to create new potentials. And so in the context of the DNRS system, many of the people that have benefited from it are people that have these crazy, inexplicable, in certain ways, inexplicable conditions where they have extreme hypersensitivity to sound, perhaps, or light, or chemicals, or scents, or foods, where they have extreme fatigues. What's happening is that their body is on high alert and is interpreting all kinds of stimuli from the environment as threat. So it's furthering the body's default to fight or flight, fight, freeze, flight, fight. Good morning, Dido. So good to have you here with us this morning. It's great to be here with you. So what happens is, and this happens with behaviors like OCD, and it's often and ADD and anxiety behaviors. And what happens is that the limbic system, and this is the cool thing, is that there is actually physiological change to the limbic system, which is the system in our body that processes fear and etc. What and moderates the whole biology of our bodies in a number of ways: digestion, breathing, heart rate, balance, just metabolism in general. So when the body is locked into, through trauma, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, chemical exposure, viral exposure, these kinds of traumas, and often they converge to create sort of a perfect storm. These kinds of traumas create sort of a lock into certain patterns in the brain that are physiological. And so through the core connection work and through the work that in the DNRS system and things like tapping, etc., what's happening is it's unlocking those locks to help repattern and create new neural synapses that then free us from these habituated behaviors and create new pathways. Now, Annie Hopper says in her program that it's necessary to be practicing a minimum of an hour a day for 6 months to be able to be retraining these pathways, creating new emotional associations, creating new associations to different stimuli. And what happens, this is not something that necessarily happens on a conscious level. So what happens when we have anxiety or we have conditions is we often can be self-blaming. And the thing is that this stuff is happening on an other than conscious level, and it's happening in our brain. Jewel is asking for attention. Here she is. She wanted to join us today. This is my baby Jewel. So there's as someone who through my life has been challenged by all kinds, well, depression for a good portion of my life, or not so good portion of my life, um, other kinds of autoimmune issues, digestive issues, uh, asthma, I mean, a whole litany of things. As someone who's been challenged by that, to recognize that this is something that has very much to do with the physiological, I'm going to say, well, I don't know if mutation is the right word, but a physiological state that can be altered, is just really affirming to the work that I do, the core connection work, because I see these transformations happening with people. And also to the notion that we can heal, that each of these individual conditions that look like conditions, all these different things, that it's really all one thing. It's all driven by this limbic system dysfunction that we can correct, which is so cool. So Rosalind says, is the practice to notice feelings and thoughts about feelings, seeing they are two different things. So I'm still diving into what exactly this process is. But one of the things is to not be focusing on all the conditions, because in medicine, sort of these things, even though medicine doesn't really necessarily have ways to address them, they're being identified as distinct and separate things, when in fact, and this was just so illuminating to me, they exist under this one umbrella of limbic system dysfunction. And recognizing that, then all the pieces sort of come together when we can say, oh, okay, so I need to recondition this fight or flight response. And I need to, that as I reshape my brain, then I can experience greater health, greater holistic health, which is something really, really beautiful and exciting. So, we talk about positive thinking, and I'm not talking about it in terms of rainbows and unicorns, although I love the ideas of rainbows and unicorns, but not spiritual bypassing kind of positive thinking, but to be reframing, recreating the associations. So it's kind of the distinction between glass half empty and glass half full, or there's never enough versus I'm abundant, or it's a dangerous universe versus life is taking care of me, and life is happening for me. Very, very different ways of relating to the world, and those different ways of relating to the world very, very much impact our experience. Now, when we get into a negative cycle, and this has been really up for me lately, because there were several events that converged to, and I mentioned this too, that converged recently for me, each of which was associated on an other than conscious level for me with past trauma, and they all converged, and it got me. It got me, or I got gotten. I allowed myself to get gotten, or it just, like these massive triggers, I got sucked in for a little bit. And then, just because I'm so steeped in this work, I was able to step back and say, okay, so what's going on here? And clearly I have some work to do. And I discovered these old traumas that had not yet been resolved or metabolized. I'll say metabolized. And what I mean by metabolized is integrated. So oftentimes when we experience trauma, what we do is we brace ourselves. We push it away. We try to contain it. Maybe we try to ignore it, to get over it, which often means just let it sink back into the darkest recesses of our being. And often our body, like our limbic system, perhaps, which is such, I don't know why exactly this notion of the physical brain has been such a liberating idea for me. Maybe because we tend to blame ourselves in some way, to look at ourselves as deficient in some way if we're experiencing depression or anxiety or fatigue or OCD or any number of different conditions. We tend to be self-blaming rather than recognizing, hey, wait a second, there is a physiological correlation here that we can address, which is, it's just, I've known we can address these symptoms, but somehow knowing that there's a physiological correlate and that it's kind of an umbrella that includes all these different things, because I could go on a whole litany about all the different conditions that I have had, but to recognize that it's really just one thing, that those things are simply symptoms of one manifestation that can be addressed. For me anyway, there's a sense of liberation around that, and a deeper sense of hopefulness, because I've seen like an ongoing progression of some of these symptoms, and now I can say, oh, okay, I have a way to address that. That's so freaking cool. So Rosalind says, if there is a feeling that something is missing, not knowing what you're actually seeking for, can the seeking itself become a loop? 100%, because oftentimes the seeking is affirming that something's missing. Maybe there's nothing missing. And so the seeking is reaffirming, I'm not enough, I don't know enough, I don't I need something to fill this hole, this gap. And so as I keep affirming that, then I'm affirming that there's this hole or gap that needs to be filled over and over and over. So there may be, another way to a way to reframe the seeking maybe is to be saying, I am discovering, rather than I'm seeking. Because if I'm seeking, I'm constantly looking, I'm constantly unfilled. If I'm discovering, I'm constantly learning and filling. Do you get the distinction there? And so Rosalind continues, lacking or letting go, perhaps using body awareness to de-stress, tapping into the present moment. I am safe. I'm curious what methods your book is recommending. Well, so I haven't finished it yet, but I don't think that the book gets too deeply into the methods. If you want to go check it out, go to I think it's called rewiringthebrain.org. And it's Annie Hopper, DNRS. And you can you can do a free introductory to her course. She actually has a course, and there are 5 pillars, and the free introduction introduces you to the concepts of DNRS, and then works with the first pillar, which is, I think it's essentially recognizing that this is, that these conditions are a function of limbic system impairment. So I recommend checking it out. I haven't experienced it. I'm entertaining the possibility of doing it myself. I see where it could be a real benefit for a number of my clients as a supplementation. And it is very rigorous. It requires a pretty big commitment in that she says you need to do a minimum of an hour daily for 6 months. So, but you can check out the intro, and apparently after doing the course, people see results. So, when you see results, when you see the effectiveness of a technique, then you might have more motivation to continue with it. So anyway, I just love the science-based confirmation that all of this I'm going to say psychoenergetics that I do in my work, and that we talk about all the time in terms of positive thinking and manifesting, that there is some physiological impact, which, it's really obvious. But it's really obvious when you recognize that when we have emotions, there's a chemical set that is correlating with those emotions. And if we can shift our emotional state, that there's going to be a different chemical set. And now this is saying not only is there a chemical set, but there's a physiological component, which makes sense because the chemistry of our body, as it shifts, changes our physiology, right? Like if we have acid stomach, there's a chemical set, and it's affecting our physiology. It could eat through the stomach lining, for example, right? So if we can, I guess the thing that delights me so much about this is the validation of the physiological scientific connection of neuroplasticity. So another person that has done work with neuroplasticity, really brilliant, is Bruce Lipton. So you might want to check out his books. There's one book that I recall called The Biology of Belief, and he talks about neuroplasticity. And it used to be that we believed that the brain was one and done, essentially, that you only had so many brain cells, and that over time they would deteriorate, and that would be the reason that we deteriorate as we age. And now there's a greater understanding about the fact that we really can retrain the brain, that we can create new neural pathways that compensate in many cases for other kinds of debility. So, for instance, when people have a stroke, their brains can be retrained and rewired to compensate for that one area of the brain that may have been damaged in that stroke. So people can regain movement and control of their limbs, of their speech, etc. And I remember growing up with the idea that we only use something like 10% of our brain. I don't know if that's still an accurate, or I don't know if that's still representative of the common belief. I haven't gotten an upgrade on that information, but certainly there is a lot of our brain that we have not employed. And when we talk about greater capacities, when we talk about intuitions, for instance, or these people that or this organization that's actually training people to see without their physical vision, like through being able to see wearing dark blackout blindfolds, for example, we have to recognize that there are greater capabilities to our cognition and our consciousness than we generally recognize. So Rosalind says, breathing through your nose increases nitric oxide, a gas that is produced by the lining of every blood cell in your body. Nitric oxide is the neurotransmitter in the body that balances out all the other neurotransmitters and helps to digest excess stress hormones. That is so interesting, Rosalind. I had no idea. Wow. So it's very interesting when I do breathing exercises. Sometimes they say breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth. I tend to breathe just through my nose generally. And it's so interesting that there's, of course, a physiological correlation and component to that. And that makes so much sense. What I've noticed through this perfect storm is I've noticed when I'm feeling stress in a way that I hadn't been conscious about previously. And when I notice that, then it gives me the opportunity to relax. Like yesterday, I noticed my shoulders were like up to my ears, and that used to be a chronic situation for me when I was a kid. Like I was always just tensed and ready. And so becoming aware of that allowed me to respond and to make a conscious choice. And I think that's so much of what we talk about all the time is choosing how we're going to curate our story, choosing how we're going to respond to a situation, becoming present so that we are present to that choice. And that's really what this is all about. It is a practice. And I guess for me, with all these weird type symptoms that I've experienced in my life, to find something that just makes sense. It's like all of a sudden it clicked. Of course, it's a limbic system thing, and the vagus nerve, which is it goes through our whole body, and it impacts digestion and breathing and heart rate, and I think blood pressure, and so all of these things are part of limbic system function. And it makes sense that, like if instead of trying to play whack-a-mole with all the different conditions, to just focus on the source, like an acupuncture point, to be able to just find that source place, address that, and then things fall away. So Rosalind says, like a repeating lyric in a song or a short thought repeating in your mind. Pay attention, don't ignore, don't be afraid or avoid. There's something important to look closer. There are always signs you can connect back to source where all the answers are. I agree 100%. And I often have those lyrics that I wake with, and then they just keep going. And it's like, okay, higher self, other dimension of consciousness trying to communicate. So it's pretty cool stuff. Anyway, that's it for today, and that's it for this week. And I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live here, circumstances willing, on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel, as well as my own Facebook pages, each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. And as always, truly, truly, it's a joy and a privilege to be able to be here with you. And I am just so deeply grateful for the opportunity to commune together and explore consciousness, explore life, and just to share the journey. So until next time, so much love to you.